What's up, everybody? It's that mess that you love. I'ma let you finish. Show number 177 on the Pantheon Podcast Network. And we have a special guest. Amy, take it away.
Hey, Rob Tannenbaum. It's Rob Tannenbaum, who is you and Jim Farber, I think, are the only two writers I know who are currently making a living. So kudos
It's
to you.
I mean,
debatable. Yeah, Amy, thank you, but it's debatable whether or not I'm making a living.
Well, I haven't seen you lined up anywhere for anything they're giving out for free. So that's my criteria.
That's only because I don't know where to line up. If you
I'll let you know. I'll let you know.
I'll hit up food banks. There should be journalist food banks at this point.
There are. I work at one of them. Trust me. I've been doing that for a while. I was like, wait a minute. Food is really expensive. I'm not really getting paid. I'm an adjunct, which is even more glamorous, low-paying job than what is it that you do? Writing. Yes, writing. That's it. Yeah, writing. Well, Rob
which is becoming an increasingly rare breed because everything seems to be going away or being sucked in. It's
I just want to blow you up a little bit. I'm going to say all the great things about Rob, and then we'll talk about it. All right, so Rob Tannenbaum is a fantastic writer. You know how I know you're a great writer? Because I have been jealous of your career. If I'm not jealous of your career, then I don't care about you. But you've always been one of my favorite writers. The fact that you and Jim Farber are both New York Jews and great writers, just a mere coincidence, I'm sure. A really funny person who every year puts out great Hanukkah music, which I love. They're so funny. And a fellow Knicks fan.
They lost last night.
Well,
Didn't
and
count.
A fellow Roxy Music fanatic like me. So,
I mean, can we mention my book?
Oh yes, please go mention your book.
I wrote a book, and it's an oral history of MTV. It came out in 2011. It was widely described as extremely entertaining. And I can promise you that if you like stories about cocaine and what used to be called midgets, then this is the book for you. And right now, I mean, not right now, but right now I'm writing a book with John Leguizamo, which is a history of Latinx culture.
Oh.
Okay, I need to ask how you got involved in that. And he's great.
Like from a New York standpoint or an American standpoint, globally? Like what are we talking?
Globally. So, John has been very outspoken in the last couple of years about issues that affect the Latinx community. I hate the word community. Latinx people. There is no community. There's no Jewish community. There's no African American community. It's just a bunch of people with different ideas. So John's big point in terms of the book we're working on is people who are of Hispanic descent know very little about their own culture. They're not taught about it. It's erased from history. So let's do a book that's entertaining and accessible, but also inclusive and authoritative, but not too long about all of these issues. So I've been learning about Aztecs and Maya and the Olmec, and then we're going to start moving forward into liberation revolutions and the post-liberation cultural flower.
Wow. I'm going to ask maybe obvious, but why... do you think it's going to be any kind of source of debate that he's not working with a Latinx writer?
Yes, I think there will be.
Okay.
And at some point I said to John, why me? Which, we had a discussion about. Really honestly, in some ways I'm not the right person. But in a way I am the right person because like the reader of this book, the ideal reader of this book, I'm learning as I'm going.
Okay.
Which in a way, novices sometimes are better able to explain things. But believe me, Amy, every morning I wake up wondering if this is the day I will be replaced.
I have to say, I sometimes believe that someone who's coming at it from an unbiased perspective can really be the right person to write about something because they're not carrying any baggage into something, right? They're like, here is the information, presenting it as it is without an opinion about one side or the other. It's like, here's the information. I think if you speak to most Black people in this country, we don't really know our history. Like that's not taught, right? You say slavery, but that's not the only history of Black people in America. But most people can't tell you anything about our history other than slavery, Jim Crow, segregation. Right.
So, Courtney, I would say the same thing about Jews. Mm-hmm. If you ask people to tell you something about the history of the Jewish people, they're going to say the Holocaust.
Yep.
And, Amy mentioned I had a sideline career as a person who wrote and performed funny songs about being Jewish. And one of the things that made me crazy was it was hard to get people to book us, maybe because we sucked, I don't know. But we can't, all our money is going into a Holocaust exhibition this year. Really? Another one? There is so much more. And if when I was growing up, if I had known that Lou Reed, Paul Simon, Randy Newman, Leonard Cohen, and Gene Simmons were all Jews, I would have had such a different feeling about my religion. So parts of all non-white histories are erased or hidden, but also when we have the opportunities to tell stories about ourselves, we need to broaden the stories we tell, right? It can't be the same thing over and over.
Everything can't be the catastrophe. And increasingly with the, we're both parent. Well, I'm beyond being a parent. You're still actually raising a child. I'm done. But increasingly the history will be like the greatest hits and then that's it. And then they'll say, well, we covered it. We talked about, it's like for most people, the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King. Okay, it's done. We're done. We're good.
Well, the funny thing about when people speak about Martin Luther King, I just had this conversation the other night because we were talking about America and being racist and all of the different things that are being thrown around. And I was like, listen, Martin Luther King is not generations ago. Martin Luther King was assassinated a year after I was born. I was alive when Martin Luther King was alive.
I remember when he was assassinated.
It's like, so this idea that we're so far removed from so many things, I'm like, we need to speak about this a little differently. But the truth of the matter is there's so much more that has happened with Black people in this country, but no one knows. And it's true. If you ask me something about the Jewish community, basically I could talk to you about the Holocaust. And, pretty much like where people had to escape from different places in Europe and some people came to America, but that's it. That's it.
Yeah. And this sort of borders on talking about Israel's war against Gaza, which I trust me, I don't want to get into. But I think that is a small example of where the almost exclusive focus on the Holocaust does some damage to the Jewish cause. And maybe I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. I haven't had enough coffee to have that conversation and never will. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, we don't talk about that much, but what we do always say is, how is the UK the one escaping all of everything in this conversation? I feel like if people we need to really, they keep abstaining from votes and things. I'm like, you guys.
Wow.
They created the problem in a way.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like our work here is done. We're going to go drive on the wrong side of the road. See ya. We'll be back. And by the way, Line of Duty, great show. See ya. We'll be back.
We'll be eating beans on toast for breakfast if you need us.
Horrible.
Well, that's true. But they have given us some of the greatest bands. Can I just say something and then we'll get into why we're actually talking to you, other than the fact that, again, I haven't seen you since 2001, which is bananas. You got me back on an ABC kick a while back.
Oh yeah, the band ABC.
Well, I know my ABCs already. Yeah, so
You might have meant the Jackson 5 song.
oh yeah, the Jackson 5 ABC. Yeah.
The Look of Love ABC.
Oh, but beyond. He's beyond. Yeah, The Look of Love, ABC. That was then and This Is Now is one of my favorite songs. Help yourself to another piece of apple crumble, I think is one of the strangest lines. I don't even know what the fuck he means, and yet it is brilliant. And he has aged well, and his voice has aged well.
He has. So I'll tell you my quick ABC story. When the pandemic started, I got very sick very early in the pandemic. At that time I was immunocompromised, and I was probably about an hour away from having to go to a hospital because my oxygen levels were so low. And this was before Paxlovid. So I've been very cautious during the pandemic, which is still going on.
I wear masks.
I still wear masks every time I leave the house. I still do.
I'm wearing a mask right now, which the listeners can't see.
Lovely. I am the only. I keep saying this, and I have to stop saying it, but I have never gotten it.
Wow.
But it just proves I'm basically antisocial.
They should study you. No,
I know I'm a freak of nature. I know.
I'm antisocial too. I stopped going to shows when the pandemic started.
Well, that was a smart move. Yeah.
And my thought was always, am I willing to die for this band?
No.
So ABC came to town, and I probably hadn't been to a show in a year. And I'm like, you know what? I need some music in my life. And how often is ABC going to tour in the 2 or 3 years left I have on this planet? So I'm going to go see ABC. And it's a smallish venue, and I'm going to wear a mask the entire time. KN95 mask, 1 hour indoors, got COVID.
Shut the front door.
But that's what happened to me. Like I was like you. I was very
guilty.
I don't want to. I did not leave my house for almost 2 years because I know people who died. People were really, really sick. So finally, it was when Pride was coming back to New York. Now I was not going to do a whole bunch of things, but a friend of mine is on the board of Stonewall, and they were having they always kick off Pride like June 1st with their Stonewall Gala. I went, wore 2 masks.
Wow.
Got COVID. Now, I feel really fortunate because I don't know if it's that I've been taking.
I'm sorry. If it makes you feel any better, I had Hep C for years. Okay.
I don't know if it was that I wore. I had a vitamin regimen that I've been doing for years, and my vitamin D levels are really high. I felt sick for 1 day. I stayed positive for almost 2 weeks, but I did not get really sick. That turned me out because I was like, I did not leave my house for 2 fucking years. I wore 2
waiting
masks.
for you. It was waiting for you.
It was sitting there. It was right at the door of the gay bar. I was like, hey, sweetie, come on in. They are free cocktails. No cock, but you're going to come home with a present.
No, I teach and I still wear. I mean, I keep a distance. I mean, I always keep a distance from my students anyway because
you just do.
You're in college. You're ew. No, I continue. In fact, I'll be places. I mean, I guess this is something that only women can understand, but sometimes the few times I've been out and I'm in a gathering and I'm not wearing one the entire time, it's sort of like, well, if I have it on part of the time, it'd be like, they use the condom half of the time, so I won't get pregnant.
In my experience, that's not how it works.
No, it's not. I have a full-grown child.
Can we talk about something that we were talking about before we started recording, which I have been thinking about lately anyway? Frankie Beverly.
Yeah.
So if you were to pick a musician whose career you wanted to have, who would it be? Because I was thinking recently that maybe for me, it would be Frankie Beverly.
Interesting.
Really?
This guy... He's made money. He's sustained his success. He can, sell out 4,000 or 5,000 seat venues, maybe larger than that. And he's never become so successful that he couldn't go out in public, right?
Right.
White people basically are never going to notice Frankie Beverly.
No, that's
except
true.
for him,
Except
and
for me.
maybe me.
Yeah.
So maybe
the Jews, I just want to add, we know I was on a plane with him once, and there was like 5,000 black people, me and a stewardess like, oh, it's Frankie Beverly.
So isn't that the perfect career?
It's the perfect career. And there are a lot of artists. That is a perfect career where you have a career. His career is not age dependent because he just go out. He's never been a dancer. There's never been choreography. We don't know if that's Maze or not behind him. It could be. It could
be
not.
Days or Ways.
Right. Or Son of Maze. We don't know. Yeah. Doesn't he do Essence Fest still every year, Courtney? He just goes down and sells it out.
He's usually the closing act on Sunday night or like on that Sunday, and it's an all white thing. Everybody wears all white and he does this thing.
But there's a lot of acts like that. I mean, acts that
I would like to be Grace Jones. I love that. I love Grace Jones's career, right? Like she's existed in the vacuum of being Grace Jones for decades, right? Yeah. And like she's very famous, but again, not like a Michael Jackson famous where you can't go anywhere and people are chasing you down the street.
But she is like use the word that we hate, but in this case applies, iconic. Frankie Beverly just sort of looks like any kind of middle-aged black guy. You know what I mean? Grace Jones, if you were in a room with Grace Jones, you would definitely know who Grace Jones is.
True, but you know what? Grace Jones has never had a gold or platinum album. All of that work she's done.
Never had a gold album?
No.
She never had a gold
album? None of those albums have ever gone. And you know what? Most of her albums have not really charted very high in the United States at all. She's got hits that people who love her love.
Right.
And even to like black people, I remember really when I was young, I loved her. My mother thought she was the weirdest thing on the planet. And I was like, but this is my tribe. Like I am this, So she's still with black people. They think, some of them think she's quite strange, but I love that for her. She's like art to me. When I look at her and, she's literally like art. So I love that career.
I can't think of anyone. I mean, there are artists that I love, that are, as I used to call them, noises that only like black people can hear, right? There were like a Gerald Levert, who I told Courtney this story once. I was interviewing him once, and he turns to me and he says, there was a white family by the pool, and he goes, see that family over there? And I'm like, yes. He goes, I have the #1 record in the country right now, and they have no idea who I am. And I'm like, you are correct, sir. You are correct, sir. Nobody knows who you are, and you have the #1 album in the country,
The other great thing about Grace Jones, which I think is not true for Frankie Beverly or Mr. Levert, is that she is still sexy as fuck. So I looked up.
Gerald's dead, so he's definitely not sexy as fuck.
Good point. Fact check my ass. So Grace Jones has had 3 singles that have been in the Hot 100. Okay. I bet you can't name all of them, but the one that charted...
Pull to the bumper, right?
No.
I'm not perfect.
So I'm Not Perfect was the biggest charting song. It went to 69 on the chart.
Boom. Yeah.
And then I Need a Man was 83. And a song that I'm sorry I don't know called Sorry.
Sorry is the second single from her first album. It's a disco song.
Okay.
So My Jamaican Guy, nothing but Pull Up to the Bumper is the one everybody, if you say Grace Jones, they all go Pull Up to the Bumper.
Because it's a disco song, and she was the queen in the dance clubs and the charts. But she was never, and Frankie Crocker would play Pull Up to the Bumper. But she just, the songs that everybody knows that you think, well, clearly these were hits, they were not hits here.
Well, we lived in New York too, so we lived in a planet that doesn't exist. If you're going to clubs in New York, it's like I was always like, "What do you mean Iggy Pop doesn't have platinum records?" It's like, no, I mean, he doesn't. He has Carnival Cruise Line hits, but he doesn't.
We're so far removed from the lives of the consumers we write about.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah, well, or far removed. I mean, we have this conversation all the time. I teach. Okay, I always go like this. I teach writing classes, but I also teach. I taught a pop music class, and I teach a history of hip hop class. And bless their hearts, these kids don't know. They don't know anything unless it happened like immediately.
So can I tell you? You teach at the Clive Davis School, right?
No, I'm not good enough for Clive Davis. I teach at LIU and I teach at St. Francis. Who the head of my department is Robert Palmer's daughter, Augusta Palmer. So that is super cool. But no, I don't teach at Clive Davis. You've taught at Clive Davis, I take it.
I taught one semester, and it was the producer as creative artist. It was basically a survey of 20th century pop music. And I said to them one day, hey, who invented punk rock? All these hands go up. Sex Pistols. No, listen. By the time the Sex Pistols put out their album, the Ramones had already put out 3 albums. So I'm going to tell you right now, the Ramones invented punk rock, and this is going to be on your final exam. And I put it on the exam. And do you know that
people still love the Sex Pistols?
I use the word with love because I really did love a lot of my kids. Half of these motherfuckers got the answer wrong. I told you it's going to be on the test.
I had Daryl McDaniels talk to my class the other day. I had to prep them as to who he was. And these are kids in a music program. They kind of vaguely knew who he was, and they knew who he was enough. He gives like a scared straight speech, by the way, which is phenomenal, about hip hop. You know, I love him to bits. He talks about how much way too much dick sucking, girls in half naked, sexy red, blah, blah, blah. And while he's saying that's not what hip hop is, every other word out of his mouth is motherfucker, fucking sucking dick, motherfucker. And I'm like, okay, it's a good thing this is a college. But they don't know those kids, you know, you have to preface. I think probably your kid will know. My kid definitely knows. Hopefully his kid will know. Courtney, anybody, because Courtney talks to young people. He is sort of.
I do talk to the young people.
He's a mentor. Yeah, no, it's absolutely hilarious where they have no it goes beyond the, Paul McCartney had a group before Wings joke. You know, it goes way beyond that. It's sort of, and especially in something like hip hop, because you're like, oh my, we have just spent the last year having a hip hop hooray over an arbitrary anniversary.
But you know what the problem is? And I agree with Rick Rubin in this. I miss the kind of radio we had when we were growing up, where you were programmed to, where you heard all of these things all of the time. Now that everybody's walking around with their own curated list, they're being fed each week. Here's a list of 200 new songs, one song from each person. You're never going to really know who an artist is. You're like, oh, I like that song, as you're hearing it in a playlist, right? As opposed to, we grew up on AM and FM radio where, I mean, it was a much more varied, and we heard a lot of stuff back to back.
Are you
not
a New Yorker,
just
Rob?
that? I'm sorry?
Are you a New Yorker?
You mean originally?
Yeah. Were you born here?
No, I'm not
saying. Yeah.
My dad worked in the city.
Okay.
I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time basically in Times Square, going to Playland. You know, here's some quarters, kid.
Playland and Fascination. Those were my spots.
Fascination.
My dad was an accountant. So when my mom wanted to get rid of me on the weekends, which was often, she would send me into the city with my dad. And my entertainment choices were, I could either sit around his office and play with the adding machines, which at that point were very cutting edge. My dad was an accountant. Or I could go, take a bunch of quarters and go to Playland. What I should have been doing is going to the peep shows, of course.
I was a big tic-tac-toe chicken girl myself. Remember the tic-tac-toe chicken on Mott Street?
I absolutely do remember tic-tac-toe chicken.
Let me first preface this by saying that in my early 20s, I was doing a fair amount of drugs. So my comprehension levels may not have been as sharp as they are now. I actually thought that this chicken was some sort of genius and that every week this chicken was, I would get off work. I was a bartender at the Baby Doll, bartender only. I keep wanting to stress that. I would walk over to get to the tic-tac-toe chicken and play and I was like, this chicken is Einstein. This is the Einstein of chickens, until I learned that they were electrocuting this poor chicken to make it jump around and play tic-tac-toe. And I will give Giuliani credit for only one thing that he did for the city. He got rid of the tic-tac-toe chicken.
Free the chicken.
Free the chicken.
And a lot of the peep shows.
Since we've been talking about race, and I love talking about race. Like America needs to talk about race constantly. And there's so many people who absolutely, why do you make everything about race? Well, I said one word. Like it's just that they never want to talk about race. So, Amy, you are a white lady. I don't think, I don't know anyone who would challenge your hip hop credentials.
Oh, I know one person, but I won't mention their name on air. But anyway, continue.
I want you to tell me later, please. Or
will. Oh, duh.
Send it to me in the text.
Yeah.
Have you gotten any pushback about being a white person who teaches a hip hop class?
Oh, well, the funny thing about that is the class was originally taught by Ninth Wonder. And they replaced him at the last minute for various reasons, nothing horrible. So on the first day of class, so quickly that my name wasn't even in the syllabus. I mean, if I tell you the school started September and as of August, his name was still. So the first day of class, there was this turning and looking, and one woman said, wait a minute, you're not Ninth Wonder. And I went, boom, you just yes, you are correct. You just passed the class. You may go home now. Now it's not an issue. I mean, I think white people being in that, but what is interesting is that I very often frame it around punk rock, and they're very fascinated by that because they know nothing. You know what I mean? I see it as sort of black punk rock in the very beginning. Run DMC. But I wrote mainly for black music magazines, and there was never a question. But because I think, like you, we never pretended to be something we weren't. I wasn't pretending to be like, MC Amy from, I'm from the suburbs. I wasn't pretending. Have you ever had any pushback about anything? I mean, because your career, you cover pretty much everything. I mean, you're pretty well versed in everything.
Yeah.
Has there anyone challenged you?
Not until you guys challenged me about why I'm writing this book with Leguizamo.
Not challenged when I was. I'm just saying. You could tell them you're Sephardic. Have you tried that?
I haven't. I mean, look at me. Look at this. Have you ever seen anything whiter than I'm holding up inside of my arm? This is the whitest thing you will ever see in your life.
I will tell you that how I got over some of my deep-seated self-hatred of being Jewish was during the early days of the pandemic. I started watching a lot of Israeli TV, and Hamana, that guy in Scheitzel, I was like, oh, he's really good looking. Wait a minute, he's Jewish? Amy, you need to get over yourself. No, the only reason I asked about Leguizamo is because he's married to a Jewish woman. His kids are half Jewish, but because he's absolutely brilliant on this, and he has been, I would say him and Rosie Perez in entertainment have really always been very like, remember the history, let us teach you the history. So that's the only reason I'm surprised.
And a lot of his work for the last, decades really has been centered around a very Latin experience,
Yeah. Is it because you're a Mets fan? Is that why he went with you?
I met John when we were both about 30 years old. Oh. I had been given an assignment by Details Magazine. God bless Details Magazine.
God bless.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, so that was one of my favorite magazines.
I know.
The assignment was to do a set diary with John while he was making Mario and Luigi. What's the movie called?
The Mario Brothers?
No,
Super Mario.
Super Mario.
So he was in that movie, and he would call me like once a week and tell me what had been going on, and I would write it up, and it was just like the grossest stuff that was happening on the set, and basically mutiny against the directors of the movie. And so I finished the story and I sent it in, and it was edited, and I think it was like about to ship. And somebody showed, right, here's what happened. John was at lunch with his manager or his lawyer, and he mentioned this article, and this guy said, "Wait, you did what?" Because there was all this stuff about boozing and disappearing from the set, not on John's part. And so this advisor said to him, "If this article runs, your career is over." So I explained this. He explained it to me. I explained it to the editor. It wasn't worth trying to ruin his career. But we've worked together, fairly often ever since then.
Oh, that's cool. He's a very nice guy. I interviewed him once very briefly for XXL, and he's a very nice guy, and he's a very smart guy, and he's a great performer.
He's a mensch.
Yeah, he is a mensch for sure. Let's talk about media.
Well, hold on. We need to take a break. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Hey, Pantheon listeners. Christian Swain here, taking a break from listening to a little Shout It Out Loudcast episode. Love Tom and Zeus talking all things Kiss. Of course, I was listening to them on my new Raycon wireless earbuds. They have quickly become my go-to earbuds because of the comfort. These soft tips are the best I've ever used. And at this price, plus a Pantheon discount, Raycon is really hitting on all marks. Sound quality is great too. I really love having these 3 EQ options because I like more bass in the music, but less in my podcast. 8 hours of playtime for the battery is great as well. Surround sound, noise isolating, and awareness mode are all included. These are great earbuds. Go to buyraycon.com/Pantheon today to get 20% off your Raycom order plus free shipping. That's right. You'll get 20% off and free shipping at buyraycon.com/Pantheon. buyraycon.com/Pantheon. Hey, Pantheon listeners, Christian Swain here. Another day, another podcast I'm working on. This time, it's Famous and Gravy with Amit and Michael. I want to let you know that I loved the Factor Meals package so much that I re-upped for myself, and then I sent a package to my in-laws. Like I was with my first shipment from Factor Meals, the in-laws were as excited to try one of the prepared restaurant quality meals. Well, they got the shipment of Protein Plus meal plan and were very impressed. See, being in their 80s, anything to make the meal prep easy is a plus for them. They heated the oven per instructions, and minutes later were enjoying a very delicious, nutritious, and dietitian-approved meal. One big win for me. But what really floored them was the taste. Like I told you, it's surprising how good these meals taste. Restaurant quality indeed. And like my own shipment, it really was everything Factor Meals said it would be for some seniors. No prep, no mess meals. Factor Meals are 100% ready to heat and eat. Take it from me and my in-laws. Head to factormeals.com/Pantheon50 and use the code Pantheon50 to get 50% off. That's factormeals.com/Pantheon50 and use the code Pantheon50 to get 50% off. Thank you, Factor Meals.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon Podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, Skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.
And we're back.
That was quick, right?
Wow. You startled me.
Around. When we say quick, we mean quick. All right, media. Remember that word?
Yeah, barely.
Yeah, I know. So,
you were GQ. You were editor over at GQ. What do you think about the state of GQ now? Because I had a subscription to GQ. I used to love GQ magazine, just like I loved Details. I thought Details was the perfect men's magazine. I loved it, and now we see that GQ Pitchfork has been sucked into GQ. And Amy was telling me that they're not even letting the Pitchfork old writers, freelancers, even write any articles for Pitchfork. And I saw a tweet that you put out recently saying to all of the young writers and editors, basically run as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about all of this?
I mean, I'm just hanging on by my fingernails, and the amount of work that I have is a lot less than it used to be. Some years my income is half of what it used to be. If I were a couple of years younger, I would need to find something else to do with my life. But, you know, I'm AARP age, so I can just hang on for a while. But if I were 20 or 25 or 30, I would get out of this stupid business as fast as I could. Because if you don't have a staff job, you can't make a living.
No.
I mean, I can kind of make a living, but that's because I've been doing this for so long. If you're just starting out, so I wrote a piece for Pitchfork. I wrote one piece for them. It was their Sunday review piece. And I don't think I'm talking out of school. It was a piece about the second Roxy Music album, For Your Pleasure. Right. And I spent close to a week on it. You know, time when you're writing, it's never concentrated or consecutive, a couple hours here, a couple hours there. Let's say I spent 4 days on it, the equivalent of 4 days. The fee was $750.
How many? What's the word count on it?
You know, it's sort of however many words you want to file.
Yeah.
I think I wrote 2,000 or so.
That's what I figured. Yeah.
But who can make a living on that? So what we're going to end up with is an entire generation of writers who are rich kids, who are getting subsidized by their parents, or who have, you know, it's their side hustle.
Right. Or, I mean, because everything has, I mean, I used to write blur, you know, I did stuff for People and for EW, which were short reviews, but it did require, and I made enough money to support myself, but it wasn't until the only time I've ever was on staff anywhere was VH1, and that was, you know, not much either. There's also just no critical, because the turnaround now has to be so quick. And I always tell Courtney this, one of the things that just sort of drove me nuts and made me not want to do this anymore, not on an emotional level, but just on a practical level, was I don't want to wait up all night for the album to drop type of thing and then have to turn something around. And now there's no lead up time. We don't get the music ahead of time. You can't live with it. You have to listen to something more than once. It can't be first impression. You know, this is not Maya Angelou. When someone shows you who they are, that's who you are. And it's like, no, maybe you hear something else. So I got burnt out on that, but there's no critical analysis. And you hear this across the board in academia, in just anything, that people just take everything at face value and they're not interested in finding out why something's good.
I get an email every day, a couple of emails saying, publicity email. Here's this new record that I'm representing. Can you review it somewhere? Reviews? Who reviews records anymore?
I know.
Rolling Stone and the New York Times. Other than that, have you seen a record review?
No.
Like I haven't been assigned speaking literally, right? Not just write about an artist. Review this record. I don't think I've written one of those in 4 years.
Wow.
There's no place for it. And it's going to be even worse with something like Pitchfork. And I was never a massive Pitchfork fan. When they first started, that was not the type of music I was covering.
Yeah.
That was not my lane at all. But, they had some very good writers there. And I was very appreciative of the fact that as they went along, there were more women writing for them. But I mean, just on that level, you're folding a magazine into a men's magazine. Oh, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for women there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Who's ringing?
Sorry, that's my phone.
Yeah, that's okay.
Someone calling to ask you to review a record.
No, because when I see places,
Did I answer?
Yeah, answer it.
But when I see places that I perceive that had youthful eyes going away, like Vice and Complex being sold and all of these staffs being laid off, and the Pitchfork was one place that still had album reviews, right? Like they reviewed all of the new records.
That was basically their bread and butter.
They reviewed singles, they reviewed albums, and now we see that go and that gets sucked in someplace, and it just feels like there's no place for journalism, like long form. You still get to write long form pieces for the Times, right? And I see there are people who get to write long form pieces at The Guardian, which is UK based and maybe in NME. But those are almost like rare situations now because everything else has gone away. I discovered so much music young because I read everything. I would buy every magazine. It was a way to really discover a lot of stuff. And even though we have the internet here, I find that there are records that have come out in the last year of these artists I've never heard of that are great. And I discovered them by accident because somebody said, have you ever heard of this person? And it's like, why doesn't anybody know about this? There's no place for somebody to write and for it to live. And it's scary to me because I think that that's pretty important because even though everybody's walking around with a computer in their pocket, we've all curated what we look at on our phones and on our computers. And some stuff is just not cross-pollinating anymore.
Yeah. We've been replaced by the algorithm. And one of the effects of that is I hear people say things like, well, what kind of music do you like? Oh, I like a broad range of music.
I say that all the time. They go, who's your favorite artist? I'm like,
well, no, but this is the younger generation.
Right.
Their idea. I have very broad tastes. I like everything from the Pixies to Nirvana. What?
Yeah. So you like the same group. But one has two women in it.
Like,
but one has a woman in it.
So broad. Yeah. So broad.
I like everything from Hank to Chem. Yeah. Well, it was really funny. I remember, I was teaching a class once and I said something about, I was giving them my background when I first started teaching, I was a music critic and all they knew about music criticism, and this is not a diss at the guy, is that guy who does music reviews on Instagram or online. There's some guy who plays, I don't even know the guy's name, but he does.
You don't mean Nardawar, right?
No, it's a Italian kind of name. He does music. He plays records and he talks about them, or there's my students read books because they saw there's a thing called Book
Talk. Yeah, Book Talk.
Look at me sounding like my mother. There's a thing the kids are doing that sounds like the book. They're ticking and they're talking. It's just sort of, and it's like, well, that's really great what he's doing, but he's talking. He's not writing. So, I mean, I'm a great talker. The writing is what I...
Yeah, but there's no place for him to write. Where would he write?
Well, what I'm saying is it's all shifted to like an oral tradition, and it's all shifted. It's all very quick. And also all these records, I mean, let's be honest. We'll talk about Beyonce could put out the worst album of all time. It doesn't matter. There are certain artists that have just gotten to that point that it doesn't matter. It's not just her. Anything they do is critic proof. And do the labels care if she gets a bad review? No. They don't care.
You have to meet people on their platform. You can't force them to your platform. And, Amy, probably you or I would be well advised to be on TikTok. But I just don't want it that badly. If this is how I go out, it's how I go out. I'm not going to go out trying to reestablish my career by doing TikToks.
I know.
It's just... I'm old and I have a little bit of dignity left. I need to hold on to that half ounce of dignity.
Courtney had to drag me kicking and screaming. And I am not somebody who hates the way I look, though I am, starting to notice that things are not where they used to be. But what else is new? He had to drag me kicking and screaming. He goes, you need to do videos to promote this stuff. And now I'm like freakishly
I forced her to do it because I hate going on camera. So I was like, you need to make these videos for TikTok. And she makes the videos.
Yeah.
Well, they're for online, not just TikTok, but that's where I use them primarily. But yeah, you know, I feel you with the whole thing. It's like, you know, I worked in the music industry for a really long time. And you know, I was a product manager at one point where I actually had to write marketing plans and figure out a full plan for an album and a campaign and all the different departments and tie it all together. I don't even think anybody does that anymore, like a real marketing plan. They're now getting rid of whole departments and finding they're hiring content people to create stuff that create, I hate the word content too, and to create whole stories for their artists to be able to play out on TikTok and on Instagram and everything in a minute or less. You know, it's like quick. We have dumbed down people to the point of a 2.5 minute song. When you think of certain songs where the intro in itself is 2 minutes, but now a 2.5 minute song, and we need to be able to get people to understand and like this artist in under a minute. And, you know, and reading has gone by the wayside. And, you know, that's it's a little nuts to me.
I'm so glad I'm in English. I'm so glad I went back to school to get a degree in teaching English because, boy, my future is so bright. You know what I'm saying? I'm counting.
You're a couple of months away from all the good stuff. Just keep hanging on.
I am.
Wait,
what's today's date? What's today's date? February 28th? Okay. May 15th. Mark your calendars. I want all. Miss Linden, 65, I start getting that half price Metro card and Medicare. And then the year later, I get, what is it? Social Security, which of course, since I was basically off the books for years, who knows what that's going to be. I cannot wait. Courtney keeps sending me all these. Look, if you go to this supermarket, you get, I can't wait. It's so freaking, I'm liking being an eminence gree. Can you talk to me about the CBGB's book you're doing? Are you doing a CBGB's book or an album or something?
It's a box set for a British record label called Cherry Red.
I know Cherry Red.
The Dead Kennedys were signed to Cherry Red.
They do very huge, elaborate box sets that are sold for a completely reasonable price. And they do a really good job of it. They're also, you know, I'm kind of doing this for free. If I were to figure it out in terms of dollars per hour, but the reason that I'm doing it is that you know, I started it with this notion that people misunderstand CBGB. What's the first word that people think of?
Punk rock.
There were maybe 5 or 6 punk rock bands at CBGB. Certainly only 5 or 6 worth remembering. And what I found is much more prominent new wave, power pop. Power pop was huge. Also, like there were folk rock and jazz bands, post-punk, jazz funk bands. So the box set starts in about 1974 and ends in about 1984.
Okay.
And I submitted 208 songs, each by a different group.
Oh, that's why you were asking for, I gave you my ex-husband's band, right? I mentioned that to you. They were CB's band. Can I tell you who I think gets left out of the New York and the punk and the new wave and whatever conversation all the time is Mink DeVille. They get like totally left out of it. And I think that I just thought that there was nobody that sounded like them. There was no singer that sounded like or presented like Willie DeVille. And I guess he just fell into so many weird categories and was sort of a weird guy, to be honest. I mean, I have a theory he killed Johnny Thunders, but that's a whole other conversation.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I have theories that have no basis in reality.
There's a name for that.
Yeah, okay. QAnon.
I mean,
I think it's called QAnon. Yeah. I mean, to me, he had something to do with it because he was living near Johnny Thunders in New Orleans. And when Johnny Thunders died, he called him up the day before and said, "Hey, Johnny, you want to go get a cup of coffee?" Ergo, he killed Johnny Thunders.
That's hilarious. So you've created that whole thing in your head. You're like, you've convinced yourself.
I also used to think this old guy that hung out at the Park Inn, I became convinced that he was William Burroughs. based on absolutely nothing than the fact that he was an old white guy hanging out at the Park Inn, and there was a brand of heroin at the time called Nova Express. I went, ergo, this is William Burroughs. Was not William Burroughs, but he was a former bank robber.
If you go back and read Please Kill Me, the oral history of punk rock, Willie DeVille talks about being summoned to Johnny's apartment the day after he dies. So there's he admits proximity. What is it on the procedural shows? Motive, opportunity, and
he's a person of interest.
Yeah.
If this were England, he would have been under caution.
This is your next podcast.
I'm telling you, I was walking around with Willie DeVille in New Orleans, and he dresses like Zorro, or dressed like he was walking down the streets, dressed like Zorro. And I'm like, there's a lot of death that surrounds you, Willie DeVille. You have two wives, at least, who died under somewhat mysterious. I mean, I love Willie DeVille, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, I'm thinking you killed Johnny Thunder. Now, never mind the fact that Johnny Thunder's, God rest his soul, was close to death for many years. Anyway, but this is my theory. I'm running with it. Feel free to publicize my theory.
It would be a really interesting. I would listen to the hell out of a podcast about Willie DeVille.
Oh, I love Willie DeVille. I was sad when he died, and you've seen him perform, right? You saw.
Never saw him. No.
Mink DeVille was a San Francisco band for a very long time. They played. And when I lived in San Francisco. All right, I know we're going way off track, but I have to. Courtney, you will appreciate this, but Rob, you will literally probably fall on the floor and never want to ever talk to me again after 20 years. I went to Winterland. Everything has to be prefaced by I had a boyfriend, because that's how sad it is. And I was sort of in a religious cult group at the time.
Sort of.
I was in a religious cult. Well, a philosophical cult group. They weren't religious. It was philosophical. And so it was Mink DeVille opening up for Rockpile, opening up for for Nick Lowe solo, where his band opening up for Elvis Costello. Wow. And because I had to, and it was free, because I knew somebody there. Because I had to get up at the crack of dawn to do something quasi-philosophical at 5 a.m, I had to leave before Elvis Costello came on, and I have never seen him.
All right, can we talk about regrets then? Because this has been on my mind lately. Because of the terrible Bob Marley movie that just came out. When I was in college, Bob Marley came to play at my college. The venue where he performed was probably a 12-minute walk from where I lived. I did not go to that concert because tickets were $8.50.
Outrageous.
And I thought that was an outrageous amount of money to spend on a concert. Bob Marley died 2 months later.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. I did see Bob Marley when I was in high school at the Beacon with the Temptations. I swear to God, again, I'm pretty sure the Temptations opened up for him.
Albert got to see that concert at Madison Square Garden, where I believe it was like the Commodores. And
he
Bob
always had
Marley.
like an R&B group. Well, I remember when Paul McCartney did that thing. Were you at that thing at Grand Central Station where Paul McCartney did a set? I don't know how I got invited.
No.
I really, honestly, they must have run out of people and gone, we need one more body. Let's bring her. And I was like, I don't want to go into the city. And I like Paul McCartney. And Courtney said to me, if he dies within the next 6 months and you had an opportunity to be like spitting distance from Paul McCartney, you will regret it for the rest of your life.
Nicest
and I'm like,
guy. I met him. I was literally, Beyonce was doing a string of shows at Roseland for the 4 album. And I'm walking down the hallway and somebody's walking toward me, puts his hand out like, hi, Paul. I'm like, hi. And I look up as I'm shaking his hand and I'm like, oh shit. It's like, hi, Paul McCartney, randomly in this hallway at Roseland. Hey. I told her, she was trying not to go. I was like, sweetie.
I know.
There's some things where you just put on a little bit of makeup and go to the show.
And it's pre-pandemic. I didn't even have to worry about it. Was just get my monkey ass out of bed. Yeah. Or my can we talk about rock? I'm sorry, go.
Reminds me of a quick funny story, which actually could move us into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame if that's what you want to do. I wrote.
You're moving into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? How about is there catering?
There is at the nominating committee meetings. Apparently, really good food at the nominating committee meetings.
Good cookies. Good cookies.
So I was interviewing Cher for an article in Billboard, and I went down to Maryland to see her perform. And then afterwards, I was brought backstage. Do you want to meet Cher? And she's taking pictures with people. Like, I find that very awkward. I don't ask people for autographs. I almost never ask them for a photo. So, it was Liz Rosenberg who probably both of you met. Liz said, look, come on. Just go. And I said, no, I just don't feel comfortable doing that. So Liz says to Cher, Rob isn't sure if he wants to take a picture with you. And Cher screams, take the picture. I could die.
And then you're going to be like, I could have had a picture with her.
Right.
I very rarely want to have pictures too, but there are certain Mavis Staples, I wanted a picture. Bobby Womack, and he did die very shortly after.
You killed Bobby Womack.
Ah, the guilt. All right.
All my years in the industry, I have one picture with Kelly from a video shoot. I have one picture with Beyonce. I have a couple of pictures with Michelle. I don't have pictures with anybody. When it come time for the pictures, I always felt like I was working. I don't need to be in the picture.
Yes.
Well,
I would let everybody else take pictures, and I was like, okay, good, great, we ready? Let's get in the car and let's leave.
Yeah, there's honestly, this is going to sound really horrible. I mean, I've had pictures taken with Q-Tip, but I know Q-Tip. We're like sort of friends. It's like there's very few people where I'm like, oh my God, I need to have a picture with this person to remember this moment, and Bobby Womack, yes, because I worship Bobby Womack. Mavis Staple, yes. Cher, did you take the damn picture, Rob?
The only picture I can remember getting taken was with Idris Elba. And it was mainly
hold on. Okay, continue.
Are you wet?
I'm dying. Well, I'm almost 65. That's not really going to happen, but
you're dry.
Hey, I'm going to spill something in my lap. Okay, yes, I am.
I'm a little less dry than normal.
You said it's a poll quote. I'll fucking kill you. He used to live down the block, he used to live in Fort Greene, and I've probably seen him a million times.
Yeah, I used to see him at the Winter Music Conference DJing his DJ sets. I knew he was a DJ before people really got to see him. He's great.
Yeah. Anyway,
he's hot though. He's still so hot.
Oh my God! I can tell you guys if you ever want to,
I know. Yes.
If you want to ever be self-conscious about the way you look,
stand next to
Idris Elba. Among other things, there was I think his head was slightly ahead of mine, closer to the camera. So he has this huge, perfectly shaped head, and then next to him, I have this peanut.
Why? I want to think he's like 6'4", right? Or
he's
6'3".
Tall.
He's tall, right?
Yeah, he's tall.
He's tall.
Yes.
My way of getting around is when Lucian was little, I would take him sometimes to do interviews of people that I knew he cared about. So there is a series. He actually had an Instagram series for a while called Lucian with Rappers. And there was a series of him at like 7 standing there frozen in time with like Boys to Men or LL or Coolio just standing there going like posing like the class photo with like, when he was little baby Lucian. What are you working on now? Other than
I'm taping a
box set
right
and a book.
Little bit. So I'm working on the book. I'm working on the box set. I'm working on a documentary that I can't talk about yet, but I'm hugely excited about. Like a dream project that I did not think would possibly come together, and it has.
If Brian Ferry asks for me, by the way,
it's not Brian Ferry.
No, you've met Brian Ferry, right?
I have.
Nicest guy in Nicetown?
No,
I think.
I wouldn't say. Well, it's not that he's not nice.
Excuse me,
I just
Rob.
don't think that nice is a priority for him.
He's very reserved.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a lot of personality. I will say that.
That's right.
He is not exuding. He's charisma because he still looks really good and he's got monogram shit and he's English and he's got the affected accent and he's like Lawrence Harvey, but he's not exuding a lot of like warmth. He's not cold, but he doesn't exude a lot of anything, you know?
To me, he really never looked comfortable on stage.
I don't think so either. And I think you can tell he always used to bite his lip sort of when he would sing. He had this thing where he was and he would do that dorky kind of dance. But you and I do worship. I met him. Actually met him twice. He came to VH1 once for some studio thing when I was working at VH1. And it happened to be a day that our friend Miguel, Miguel Beguer had taken me out to a fancy pants lunch. So I decided to dress like a normal human being. And Brian Ferry was there and I was on air talent. So I got treated like and I literally did like the Kramer walking by, went, and then turned around. And he was asking me where he could buy Power Ranger figures for his kids, which I thought was cute. And then I interviewed him for Billboard for that album, his last solo record, the one where he did Johnny and Mary.
Yeah.
Anyway, I changed my outfit 3 times before I went there. And I was putting out accessories and clothing and taking pictures and sending them to my best friend going, okay, which outfit should I wear? She'll go, wear that and wear that, on the off chance that Brian Ferry would suddenly look at me and go, why have I been dating heiresses and models my entire life?
Here's how I know you're not a Mac, Amy. When Brian Ferry said, where can I get Power Rangers? You didn't say, I have a bunch of them in my bedroom.
You're correct, sir. You're correct, sir. He disarmed me with his, the one bad thing about Brian Ferry, though, is that his sons are into fox hunting. And I've been told that Brian Ferry's politics, that he was a Brexit guy.
Yeah. He's pretty right wing. I mean, I don't know how far right wing, but certainly right of center. Yeah.
He was Brexity.
I saw an interview a couple of years ago where he used the N-word, which somehow didn't get picked up as thoroughly as it did with, John Mayer, to pick a non-random example. And he was quoting David Williams, the guitar player, who is African-American, or was, I believe he's dead. And, this is an example of how, well, it's not how not to, because just never use the N-word, but how white people sometimes think it's okay to use the word.
Yes.
He said, David Williams, when I saw him, he used to say to me, what's up, my book?
Blank, right.
You're telling a story about what a black person said to you. You still don't get to tell that story. No. But I know all 3 of us know this and agree.
Well, yeah, but he's still dreamy. What's your?
All right, I'd still fuck him.
Yeah.
She showed it. I love that you
wrote a Nazi tattoo. Yeah. You could have a Nazi tattoo on his stomach, and he would still blow it.
She's like, we can cover that with my hands while I'm doing all of the rest.
I just love him. Also, every time I do interviews with guys, and then I'm sorry, Courtney, I know that I am not that girl, because whenever I do interviews with guys, not guys, but it always comes down, wow, you're just so smart. And I'm like, I'll leave now.
If I wasn't dry before, I am now.
Right.
I love that you wrote a definitive book on MTV. I worked at MTV for 1 year and I absolutely hated it. It was the worst professional experience of my life.
Why?
MTV, first of all, I knew I didn't want to work there. Let's start with that in the beginning, right? This was my first job after Sony. I had been at Columbia Records for years, and I was in the video promotion department. So I dealt with MTV a lot, and I knew that MTV was a culture place, and you have to fit into that culture. I've always just kind of been an individual sort of guy. I'm like, I'm not trying to fit into culture. I'm just trying to come in and do my job, do it well, and be whatever. So I met great people there, and there were great people there, but I just never felt like I was part of what an MTV culture was going to be. So it wasn't the best experience for me. You know what I mean?
What year, Courtney?
Oh God, when was I there? Okay, I can tell you by things that happened. I can never remember the years. I was there for the VMAs when Madonna kissed Christina Aguilera and Britney. I was also there when it was the second year of MTV producing the Super Bowl halftime show. And this year, the big star was Janet Jackson. So I was there for the Janet Super Bowl moment. And I remember that meeting the next morning when...
So it's like like mid to late 90s, right?
No, that was...
Was it post 2001?
What? No, it had to be in the 2000s because Madonna performed Hollywood from American Life. So what year was American Life? That album was like 2000.
You're the only person here who would know that.
Maybe actually, you know what? It was probably 2003. It was probably 2003 because then I went to Violator and then I went to Music World. So it had to be like 2003. Yeah, I didn't fit in MTV culture. You know what I mean? I just didn't.
The culture had changed a lot. I mean, it definitely changed once Viacom bought the company. But the great thing about it, our book, it's just the first 10 years, because after the first 10 years, it's just not that interesting. Right. And one of the themes in the book is if you were young and brave and had an idea, they would probably let you run with it as long as it wasn't expensive. There are companies where in order to have any influence or make any decisions or create anything, you have to put in 10, 15 years of shutting up. But, probably the best example is Yo MTV Raps, which happened just because Ted Demme wouldn't give up. And he kept saying, I want to do a rap show. I want to do a rap show. I want to do a rap show. And finally, they gave him like 50 cents and said, we're going to air it at 3 a.m. And they did. And it got the highest ratings they'd ever had in overnight. And, the next thing you know, how old was Ted? 23? The next thing you know, he's running the most important show on MTV.
But
co-running. No disrespect to Peter Dougherty.
Yeah, you don't have, we've talked about it in the court. You don't, back then the idea of being young and hungry was viewed as an asset. Now it's viewed as we can get you to work for cheap.
Yeah.
So it's when I was at VH1, which is a very different animal than MTV, because this is when they still had the hyphen, in VH1. And there was a no blacks, no Jews, no dogs policy in terms of videos. I was considered like so old because I was like 34 or 35. I was the only person in the office who had a kid. I was the only person who had a lot of jobs. But these guys were really young and hungry, and they were willing to work. And now, we were getting back to all these magazines shutting. Why pay people like you who might actually want a living wage when you can get somebody who's living 3 people to an apartment and their mom and dad is still supporting them?
If you're an editor or a publisher and you can get 30% of the quality for 40% of the pay, you look at that as a bargain.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Court, you want to talk a little bit about the Knicks? And then
they lost last night.
I know, but they lost last night. You have to.
They also lost on Saturday.
But they won the day after.
Well, they should have beaten the Pistons.
But they won.
But the game was closer than it should have been, too. That game, and they won on a with a very controversial ending.
I'm trying to get Courtney to take a much more.
No, because I'm really, we need Julius. We need Julius to come back. We need OG, who we traded for. It was a great trade, but again, his body's made of glass. This guy cannot stay not injured. He played a couple of games, and already has had surgery on us, right? So that. I get nervous thinking that he's going to be good for us in this last stretch of the season. And Julius, we don't know when he's coming back. He's making progress because he actually should have surgery, but he's not having the surgery, right? And maybe he'll have it at the end of the season because they advised him to have this surgery at the end of last season. So I think that we're doing okay. There's excitement around the Knicks, but we still need help. We do.
It's such an interesting disparity between the two of you in your Knicks fandom. And
I'm a fan. I meditate.
no,
I've
I'm not.
gotten to the point where I can't get, because look, I don't want to be the harbinger of doom. They will eventually nick it all up.
Yes, but we are. I've been a Knicks fan since, I'm not even going to tell you what year. I was at my first Knicks game, was one of the most famous games.
1969.
Oh wow, I can't beat that. But you remember the game where they scored they were down to the Milwaukee Bucks by 16 points with like 5 minutes left, and this was the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Oscar Robertson Milwaukee Bucks. The Knicks went on a 17-0 run and won right at the end of the game. And I was at that game.
Wow.
If you're a Knicks fan, you have trauma.
Yes.
And also, I'm a Mets fan and a Jets fan. So
Jesus Christ.
Too.
Yeah, are you
Listen,
how
I grew
much
up in
therapy
Queens.
are you in?
Shea Stadium was right down the road.
I know.
It's just
First
kind of
football
like
game I went to was Shea
like,
Stadium.
And the fucked up part is the Mets will start out great, and you're like, oh my God, we're winning, we're doing the thing, and then it just happens. Or watching everybody be like, we've got Aaron Rodgers, and I wasn't really excited about that. I was like, oh, we need a young quarterback, and watch him in game one be like, zoop, and out, and you're like, well, there goes that.
So what's unique about our teams isn't that they suck. Mm-hmm. It's that they will break your heart.
Yeah.
Oh.
The Seattle Mariners suck, but they're not going to break your heart.
Well, because we're New Yorkers, in a lot of ways we feel like we're owed this, and Madison Square Garden is the premier basketball arena. Sorry, it just is. And as we've said, being big in New York really does matter more than anywhere else. But, being long-suffering Knicks fan is a redundant term. I mean, we get all hyped. The only good thing is that people have finally realized that the Brooklyn Nets are not a New York team, and I live down the block from them, and stop pretending that they are, I don't know what they are. They're like Nay's Papaya. That's not a real place, okay? That's a made-up place that you're eating at.
The thing is, I love my Knicks, and we all love the Knicks, and I want the Knicks to do well. But when I see, you start seeing the signs of the things, we just know how this story goes.
Yeah.
Like, we get our hopes up thinking, okay, we got a good team this time. Oh, everybody's hurt again. Oh, the guy you just traded for has already had surgery. Oh, okay, great.
I was not beaten by my parents, but I think I understand the idea that you're 10, you're in your bedroom, you're playing with dolls or baseball cards, whatever, you're having a great time, and then you hear the car pull up in the driveway, and you hear your dad stumble out of the car, and you know what's coming.
Yeah.
You know you're going to get a beating. That's how we are as fans. We're just waiting for the car to pull into the driveway.
Well, I do think that Dolan is like the poltergeist that keeps them. If Dolan, my dream, we've discussed this, Court and I, my dream is that a Donald Sterling situation happens with Dolan, and he is kicked out because I think he just looms over that place.
He kicks out, but then they play in the building that he owns. You see what I'm saying? It's like,
no, they would get him out of everything.
No, if they made him sell the team, they could not make him sell. He's a private company. They could not make him sell.
Then he'll have to die. And he will just have to die, and I'll meditate.
It's not, but he's been less interfering. What the problem is, and you've noticed this with the Knicks, they get to that place where they're desperate and they start looking like the Keystone Cops, right? They just start tossing the ball, and it's like not. I'm like, are you aiming for the basket? We see it. They're running around and they get frantic. We don't have that person who's like Steph Curry is a clutch guy who in those moments has those nerves of steel. He aims, he shoots, and more times than not, he makes the shot. We don't have that guy who can really be steely in that moment and make the shot. It seems like a panic sets in, and we just see the ball flying everywhere but in the basket.
I think
Brunson might be that guy.
But he needs help.
But he's a dream. I mean, he is like, he's like created in a factory. He's such a dream.
Yeah.
He's cute. He's funny. The little videos with him and Hart punching each other are adorable. They're just so cute. I mean, they're just adorable. He goes on talk shows and he's self-effacing and cute. And the Justin Bieber thing is like, what? He walks out to Justin Bieber every night. The same song.
Woody Johnson, who owns the Jets, announced, I think yesterday, that he will once again be raising money for Donald Trump because he thinks Trump was a great president and everything worked better under Trump. Dolan, I'm not as up on this.
He's a Republican. He's definitely a Republican.
Yeah, and I think he has supported Trump to some degree. So these are white guys who own teams that maybe not majority, but have significant number of players of color. Does having a right-wing owner hurt the team because players don't want to come there, or are players just showing up for the cash? And
players don't want to come there because they're a losing team that doesn't win championships. They don't even make it to the postseason. So who wants to come to that? You know?
But also, aren't most teams honestly owned by rich white guys?
And most of these big billionaires, they're all usually Republican. They don't want anybody. They love the message of that. And I love that when people always say things work better under Trump, but then you ask them to name the things, and nobody can actually name the thing.
Well, they're
always like things. This country. I'm like, Trump has never left. He has helped set all of this in motion and all of the madness. And they ignore, because it's very easy to ignore racism. And people act like that's a headline, and all of those other things aren't as big a deal because they're not affected by it. That's just the truth. You know? Well,
rich white guys are always going to, I think, mainly, except for Ben and Jerry, I guess, and George Soros. But of course, he's the Illuminati and controls the world. Are going to veer Republican because the tax breaks. They don't have to pay as many taxes. I mean, and I don't know how they've never, the basketball players aren't going to talk about their politics. I mean, I think the only one we really know their politics is obviously Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and he's retired, and LeBron. I mean, during the whole George Floyd thing, but I've never heard anyone on the Knicks, they put them in these it's Black History Month, and they get the Martin Luther King Day. Here to honor the great black leader of this country, we're going to make you work.
Right, we're going to kick Charles Oakley out of Madison Square Garden.
We're going to kick Charles Oakley out of Madison Square Garden and make you wear like a red, black, and green Black History Month thing, and have the dancers dance to what's the song by Outkast with Rosa Parks? Yeah, they'll dance to Rosa Parks. That's what they're kind of doing. We have to wrap this because I have to go work today, which I hate. I know.
Why? Listen, nobody's listening by now anyway. This has been three old people yell at clouds.
But they
literally
fun
at
fact,
the cloud.
That's kind of what they like about us, is some really strange reason. Let me tell you, Amy and I have been having these conversations lately because just random people have been saying to us, I listen to your show, and we're both just like,
well, my random people are homeless people. Okay, so
but guess what? Guess what? If you're homeless and you are still listening to us, that says something, and that's a real New York motherfucking story. And on that note, thank you, Rob, for coming on. And you should actually all go and check out Rob's book, which is Oral History on the First Years of MTV, because that is the golden age of MTV, really, that sort of set the standard for all of the other video channels and that kind of youth-oriented sort of play. It's so hard. It gags me that MTV lost that. I mean, they had the young people. They had it in spades. They had it in spades. And we look forward to your upcoming
and anything set. You see his byline on. You and Jim Farber are our two favorite newspaper writers. Don't tell the other ones. They write books. We don't, hype. You and Jim Farber. We love you and Jim Farber.
Can I leave you with this?
Please.
There was a period of time when I was working on something with Kenya Barris, the guy who created Blackish. And he was in LA and I'm in New York, so it was a lot of phone calls. And at the end of every phone call, he would say, all right, peace. And I felt so bereft because as a white person, I don't feel like I can say peace. I certainly can't say peace out. Yeah. But what do we have? Like, all we have is goodbye or take care.
No, you can go see ya.
See ya. All right, so that's what Amy, Courtney, I had a great time. See ya.
And on that note, kids, you know what it is. You're listening to us here on the Pantheon Podcast Network. You know the drill. Tell a friend. Tell your cousin. Tell a person you're divorcing. Tell your divorce attorney. Tell the judge.
Tell the homeless person on the street.
Tell the guy at your bodega that you used to be able to get a sandwich from, but now it's all weed. Tell them all. And we will see you next week. Toodles.
Hey, this is Liberty DeVito.
This is Mike Del Giudice.
This is Michael Cavanaugh from Broadway's Moving Out.
This is John Jackson, director of the Billy Joel Archive.
This is Russell Javers.
This is Richie Cannata, and you're listening to Glass Houses, a Billy Joel podcast. It's awesome.
I'm Michael Grosvenor.
And I'm Jack Frenino.
We're lifelong Billy Joel fans who launched a podcast in 2020 celebrating the music we love.
Whether you're looking for the greatest hits or the B-sides and rarities, you'll find it all here. And if you've ever wondered what happens behind the scenes of a concert or recording session, we've got you covered.
Join us as we explore albums, tours, band members, the latest news, and more. You'll also get a unique glimpse into the music industry straight from the musicians and other professionals who help make it all happen.
Tune into Glass Houses, a Billy Joel podcast at glasshouses.pod.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Glass Houses, a Billy Joel podcast is a proud member of the Pantheon Podcasts Network.